Typically, this far into the primaries, the remaining Democratic candidate goes after the Republican. But these primaries have been anything but typical, and so it is today that in our third story, a Democrat is going after the Republican candidate, but the Democrat is one who did not become his party's nominee. Senator Joe Biden, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, in a major foreign policy speech today, deconstructed, demolished the various shifting rationales for staying in Iraq. As John McCain has put it, 100 years, 1 million, 10 million. You knew it was a bad sign for McCain when Biden began by praising him as a man he admires and considers a friend. Sure enough, 4 sentences later, he blasted McCain as, quote, wedded to the Bush administration's myopic view of a world defined by terrorism. Like former presidential rival Chris Dodd, who endorsed Obama, and Bill Richardson, who also endorsed Obama, Senator Biden has remained silent about which of his 2 remaining rivals has his endorsement or whether he has even decided. Senator Biden is our guest tonight from Washington. Always a pleasure, sir. Good evening.
Good to be with you, Keith.
In this speech, you say McCain's 100 years comments fueled conspiracy theories about America's presence in Iraq. What are those theories? Why should we not think they really do apply to Bush and McCain?
Well, I do think they apply to Bush and McCain, but the point that I was making was John McCain was making the point that, look, we'd stay for 100 years in Iraq if it were like it is in Germany or Bosnia or in Japan or Korea. The truth is that we're there in each of those places because there's been essentially an armistice. There's an agreement. There's a settlement. They're not killing one another. And but the larger point was, when we say to the Arab world that we would stay in Iraq for 100 years, even in peaceful circumstances, it feeds the assumption that we're there to control their oil and to have a permanent military base. That's what I meant when I say it feeds a conspiracy theory, the urban legend in the Arab street, that the only reason we were in Iraq in the first place and stay in Iraq is because we want to control their oil and have a permanent base in the region.
And when the vice president says, by the way, if we pull out prematurely, Iraq or Al-Qaeda will get control over all of Iraq's oil resources, I imagine that contributes to that conspiracy theory as well.
Well, I think it does too, and because there's nothing rational about that statement. I held 2 weeks of hearings, Keith, a week prior to Petraeus and Crocker coming before my committee, our committee, the Foreign Relations Committee, with a lot of former generals and foreign policy experts, and they all reached the exact opposite conclusion that the administration and John McCain reaches about if we begin to draw significantly down our forces in Iraq. They think what happens is that Al-Qaeda shrivels up because the Sunnis, the Shia, and the Kurds all hate Al-Qaeda. And their reason for being, the irony is, there would be no Al-Qaeda in Iraq were it not a Bush-fulfilling prophecy having invaded Iraq. And so this whole notion that these catastrophic things will happen if we leave are very much at odds with what an awful lot of the defense establishment and the foreign policy establishment believes to be the case. They think the exact opposite would occur.
You say in the speech you will be speaking over the next few months in detail about how the next Democratic president can exert leadership in the world. Given the timing of this, it's no surprise perhaps that this has been interpreted in many quarters as something of an audition, this speech, for a vice presidency or possibly Secretary of State. How much do those scenarios influence this speech? Have you discussed either of those job openings with either of the Democratic candidates?
They do not influence it at all, Keith, and that's why I haven't endorsed anybody. Because the moment I endorse either one of the candidates, it would be put through the prism of Biden's doing it because he wants one of those 2 jobs. I don't want either of those 2 jobs. I've made it clear to both candidates that I'd have no interest in either of those 2 jobs. Let me tell you why I'm doing this. I think we as Democrats, should not shy away from a direct confrontation with the Republicans on national security. The Democratic Party and the Democratic candidates are stronger on national security than George Bush or John McCain. George Bush's policy, and to the extent that John follows it, have put us in such a deep hole, made us weaker than we've ever been in the recent past, in the last 40 to 50 years, and we should relish this debate. And so while the 2 candidates are understandably preoccupied with one another, as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, I want to make it clear the Democratic Party is not at all reluctant to debate national security with John McCain or George Bush. We are stronger on it. We will make America more secure and make it safer.
But certainly that is hindered to some degree by the fact that this debate continues internally within the Democratic Party.
Well, sure.
But Congressman Frank just told the Associated Press today that he thinks whoever is trailing in this race as of June 3rd, even if it is indeed his candidate, Senator Clinton, should bow out, and he said probably sooner than June 3rd. Do you agree with him?
Well, I think the practicality is that's going to happen. Look, if there is not a decisive victory in Pennsylvania by Senator Clinton, or if Barack Obama comes close, I think things are going to start to shut down. Conversely, if Hillary Clinton, as one poll says, I find it hard to believe, if one poll says beats Barack by 20 percentage points there, then she has a legitimate case to stay. I think we should all sort of calm down a little bit. I think this race, this competition has generated an incredible benefit for the Democrats. 250,000 new Democrats in Pennsylvania, every state in the union, including mine. So I think it's good stuff. I'm not at all worried about what's going to happen. The primaries, by the time they're over, I think it's going to be clear who the nominee is.
Well, I can't say anything to calm down other than amen. So we'll leave it at that. Senator Joseph Biden of Delaware, Chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, thank you as ever for your time, sir.
It's a pleasure being with you, Keith. Thank you very much.